And this is a friendship that'll never ever end.
Did you miss me? So, how I have missed you.
Unleashing a new type of horror, Bray Wyatt debuted at the Firefly Funhouse under the guise of a children's television show. Featuring character puppets such as Mercy the Buzzard, Ramblin' Rabbit, and Huskus the Pig, each different puppet had their own personality, all of which seemed just a little, let's say, off. The element of horror explored here is unnerving, maybe more so than the other elements we could explore due to the childlike nature and feel of the show. Wyatt brought subtle elements of horror to the program that could go overlooked by its adolescent audience. Looking back with a 2022 lens, adults can dissect some of the children's programs from decades ago and realize some of the content consumed by children is almost downright terrifying, from an aesthetic perspective at the very least.
Oh no! Laughing stock. That's one whale of a storm. We better run and hide.
It'll be your hide if you turn tail, Percy. Be brave! Brave the waves! Oh, look! It's Bravery Cave! You have to go inside! Oh, look ahead! It's Bravery Cave!
Come inside, Percy! There's a new friend in there, and he wants to play a game!
I don't know how to play.
Oh, he'll show you exactly what to do. Come on. I'll hold your hand. Percy, come in.
One of the comparisons I find intriguing and shows how much of a master Bray Wyatt is when creating this character are the parallels to the creepypasta television show Candle Cove. If you don't already know, Candle Cove is a 2009 creepypasta that centers around the fictional television show about puppet pirates. One of its most terrifying characters, Skin Taker, is a skeleton pirate who wears clothing made out of children's skin. This creepypasta emphasized how creepy and odd some of the things geared toward children were and still are. Some of the most iconic television characters for kids have a chilling style that accompanies them.
Okay, Joseph, come over here. Here's a name. This boy's name is Joe.
Joe.
Is that your name at home, Joe? Well, if it is, there it is on Mr. Lyon's drawing board. Let's see what happens to it before you count to 30. 4, 5, 6, 7. He made out of your name, Joe? An elephant, right?
A lazy elephant.
Why don't you give him that? And let's try just one more. Ready to go. Let's see one more talent. Okay, Ken, there you go.
Wyatt was able to meld almost two different characters to create a host for the Firefly Funhouse. Two very different models of human being that he was able to break down the DNA and build back up into the perfect, trustworthy, and persuasive version of Bray Wyatt we have seen. The blatant influence of the beloved Fred Rogers showcases the brilliance of the character and concept, acting as a Trojan horse for the audience to have a desire to lower their guard, but the influence of a much darker and sinister side begins to shine through.
Sometimes I feel I'm scared to live. Living is what scares me. Dying is easy.
The persuasiveness and manipulation characteristics the Bray Wyatt character has shown from the very beginning were still evident even in this iteration and evolution into the Fiend.
Just follow my voice. You don't really have a choice. And pull up your pants and do the muscle man dance. Now wiggle your behind. Erase your mind. Pull up your pants and do the muscle man dance. muskets. We're ready for a night out on the town.
Thank you, Ray. I feel better already.
See what happens when you trust me? And remember, my fireflies, I will always light the way. And all you have to do is let me in.
Is let me in.
Just let me in.
Let me in.
Oh my goodness, not again! Not again! Oh my God! It's Kane! The Demon Kane came up through the ring!
In a world where image is everything, Wyatt had to come up with something new, fresh, nothing that could be compared to any of his predecessors. Already having a specific vision in his head, he had to make it a realization. First get it down on paper, then make it a reality. He enlisted the help of a Missouri-based tattoo artist, Kyle Scarborough, bombarding his phone with tons of reference photos from the horror world. One of the main inspirations being the Joker from the New 52 comic books, where his face had initially been surgically removed, then reattached using straps and clips to retrofit the flesh of his old face into a wearable mask. Seeing the initial design that would later become a version of the Fiend, it is no secret Wyatt was indeed a fan of this version of the Joker. Bringing this character off the page and into real life would take a whole team of people to break down the mechanics of how this mask needed to be constructed. Wyatt looked to a familiar face in the horror community to get the job done. Jason Baker, a protege of Tom Savini, was given the task of birthing the Fiend into the real world to terrify wrestling audiences. A creative brainchild of Savini and Baker, Colossum Studios is responsible for some of the most intricate effects and props from pro wrestling, music, and some of the most prominent horror films released in recent years.
I made you some breakfast.
What'd you put in that?
Salt and pepper.
Created in 2020, amid the pandemic, Colossum Studios was created almost out of necessity for Baker, when a huge project for WWE for their annual WrestleMania event fell through. As COVID put a halt to their main source of revenue, Baker found himself in a position many Americans did during March of 2020, just trying to get by. Opening Colossum Studios, Baker found a unique niche in creating horror-based PPE masks after a social media post took off. As a childhood fan of WWE, Baker seemed to already know what wrestling fans would be looking for in their next big character from the dark side. When Baker was asked about the freedom to create the Fiend mask, he said, "I will say this, WWE did give Bray and I a lot of creative freedom. The level of detail and versatility in the Fiend mask instantly gave this character a different feel. Not just a character you see in the wrestling world, but a character that has a cinematic feel, a quality that wrestling and horror fans will purchase face value, and can be compared to horror icons that were mainstays throughout the slasher wave of the 80s. Jason Baker created this intricate piece of the puzzle that would strike fear into the souls of wrestling fans and Wyatt's opponents alike.
Oh! Oh! Oh!
The official wrestling debut of the Fiend character took place at WWE SummerSlam on August 11th, 2019 in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Fans that night weren't sure what was in store for them as they awaited the arrival of Bray Wyatt's new personality, the Fiend. What was presented was one of the most intriguing and uniquely horrifying entrances in WWE history. Making quick work of beloved superstar Finn Balor, cemented the Fiend as a new force to be reckoned with.
I should warn you, though, while you are an extraordinary man, the Fiend is no man. The Fiend is an abomination. The Fiend is power. Fiend remembers.
Creating an almost unbeatable monster, the Fiend garnered a cult-like following which most didn't anticipate that quickly. Audiences developed an appetite for destruction, to watch the Fiend destroy their favorite legends and babyfaces. Becoming one of the biggest attractions in World Wrestling entertainment at the time, the Fiend found himself competing against babyface champion Seth Rollins at Hell in a Cell. Rollins at the time set out to be a fighting champion, and with the Fiend set in his sights, he took on one of the biggest tasks of his career. WWE inadvertently created one of the most controversial finishes as the Fiend suffered a loss to referee stoppage when Wyatt was buried under several weapons and destroyed with a sledgehammer by Rollins. As the arena let out resounding boos, seeing the Fiend vanquished, it was at the time the realization of how the uniqueness of this dark character resonated with fans. Only a few short months later, COVID would hit the world and vastly affect the way WWE would present their shows and feuds. While some characters would struggle in a setting with no audience, due to the creativeness of the Fiend character and supernatural elements, some of the most iconic matches and moments were created. WWE had to pivot to some more cinematic matches for their big events. With this came another opportunity for the Fiend to show how marketable this persona was. The Fiend would take on John Cena in one of the biggest cinematic matchups to date. Cena, being the poster boy of WWE for over a decade, proved to have a dark cloud looming over his head as the Fiend hand-selected him for a match at WrestleMania 36. Cena had a career filled with accomplishments, but the Fiend would take a page out of another horror icon's playbook to make all of John Cena's dreams turn into nightmares.
Uncle Bone Turn. Look familiar.
Okay, asshole. Let's dance.
Why should we fight? We're old friends, you and I. Remember? Let's get high.
Cena found himself in a Firefly Funhouse match at WrestleMania, being dragged into Bray Wyatt's world as he relived defining moments in his career, but with a warped twist. Wyatt played the role of the composer as he led Cena on his journey of pain and anguish until the very end, when the Fiend himself was able to put an end to Cena and the legacy he left behind.
Hey, John! I guess you were right all along. We really can't see you.
You've got the body. I've got the brain.
As the Fiend ran through a roster of heroes, he found himself in a unique position. One of mentor taking on a former protege, or maybe the creator taking on the monster.
Look, it's moving. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's moving. It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
When Braun Strowman became Universal Champion, it didn't take long for the Eater of Worlds to come calling, wanting his shot to take the throne to complete the Fiend's path of redemption. Facing Strowman in a swamp fight at the horror-themed Extreme Rules, Wyatt pulled Strowman into his world once again, with an intention of putting an end to the monster among men by finishing it where it all started, the Wyatt compound. As Strowman found himself in a familiar setting, he was at the mercy of Wyatt. When Strowman finally got the upper hand, Wyatt called the Fiend out to play once again, dismantling the monster in the place Strowman once called home. Wyatt was able to pull inspirations from so many horror icons for these cinematic matches. The otherworldly quality of Freddy Krueger in A Nightmare on Elm Street, as well as Jason Voorhees in Camp Crystal Lake. The Fiend continued to be a supernatural force throughout the rest of his run in the WWE, making him one of the most popular characters in modern times and arguably one of the most popular horror characters ever created.
Oh no.
The Fiend has carved a unique path in the wrestling world as well as in the horror community. It is one of the few characters that was created with such a specific vision and clearly a labor of love from all who were involved in breathing life into this demon from the depths. The man behind the Bray Wyatt character is a true creative that has the ability to create so many special qualities and versions of the character we see on the screen. With a new version of the character on the horizon, there is no telling what twists and turns wrestling and horror fans are in for. The only thing we know for sure is it will be a hell of a ride.
You killed the world! Killed the world! You sent him away. And they're the reason why you were just a shell of what you once were. And I say to revel in what you are. But you, sir, you are a liar. You're a liar. You claim you don't wear a mask. If you do not wear a mask, but we both know that's not true, don't we? I can see you. You will never be able to hide from me. Your Uncle Howdy. Let me in.